So settling your body in a comfortable position. If possible, keeping the back quite straight. And once you decide to start your meditation, try to keep the body still. The body and mind, although separate entities, they coexist very closely. And if you move about too much, your mind becomes jarred. So to increase your stability, try to keep, if you can, just try to keep fairly still. It's very helpful. Then half close the eyes. And to draw the mind inward, just become interested in your breathing. Just interested generally on how the body is breathing. Imposing no rhythm whatsoever, simply noticing. Your mind wants to go outward to sounds, but you keep yourself fixed internally on the breath. And you begin now to scan your body externally and internally, simply noting any areas of tension, doing nothing about it, simply noting and moving on. And now you begin to notice that on your out-breath, this tension that you noted flows away from the body on the out-breath. Noticing how relaxed your facial muscles are, how soft the area around the eyes, how wide and spacious the space between both eyebrows. Feel how your shoulders have dropped. to a more relaxed position. And placing your attention on your abdomen, notice how much more responsive the movement of your abdomen is now to each in-breath and out-breath. Each in-breath and out-breath. Keeping the body in this relaxed state. Begin to notice now that with each in-breath, your mind is becoming brighter. With each in-breath, your mind becoming sharp and clear. Now place this sharp, bright, clear mind to the entrance to both nostrils, allowing your mind to become fully aware of the sensations of the breath there, fully aware of the sensations on each in-breath and out-breath. Each in-breath and out-breath. And it's with this relatively relaxed body and bright mind that we generate a strong, positive motivation for the session. And when it's clearing your mind, shift your focus to that. If you're happy to do so, you can do the prayers. If you don't want to do prayers, no problem. Simply keep that motivation in your mind. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one who goes beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be attained, teacher of gods and human beings, To you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, offer refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and offer refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and offer refuge. When, O supreme amongst humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who were wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, formed supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the 3 worlds are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Saviour having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated, and to also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to use the sublime community in tending virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all 3 ever devout homage, to all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms, atoms in all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions. Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the foe of falls, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. So welcome again. It's good to see you. As most of you know, this is a session in a series of teachings on presenting the LAM RIM. Each of the aspects that we've discussed are worthy of months of teaching. But what we're trying to do here is to present the path in such a way as you can see how everything links in. That's important. You have to see things as it flows. There's a flow to the LAM RIM, the path. There's a flow to it. Each step is important. None of it should be missed out because each step relies on the previous step. And so we started, if you remember, looking at mind and the nature of mind. That was very, very important because it is a mental journey. It's a mental journey from bondage to freedom. Now, this journey takes a lot of energy. And so we started looking at the precious human rebirth. And that was very important because we need to recognize the qualities that we have already, that we have to walk this path. It is no use walking this path with a mind that's full of guilt, with a mind that is depressed. It doesn't work. Certain aspects of the path will help you with depression, that's true. But to walk this path, that's not the mindset. It's the mindset that recognizes the qualities that you have to be able to do this. And that brings a kind of freedom and energy. Once you get an idea of this, then it's worth looking at how you usually spend this energy. And that's when we started looking at the 8 worldly dharmas, how we actually spend our time. And it was the same in Buddha's time as it is in ours. Working for the pleasures of the 5 senses. Of course we do. Why wouldn't you? And working to make sure you don't have anything that upsets the 5 senses. Working for stuff, worldly gain. And working really hard to make sure you don't lose any of it. Ringing bells? Yeah. That's how we spend our time. Yes. Working hard to hear sweet, pleasant words, of course. And working very hard to make sure you don't hear the unpleasant. Working extremely hard to make sure that people admire you, they like you. And working extremely hard to make sure that you're not blamed for anything and you're not criticized. It's the perennial human condition. We live in a desire realm, and therefore these are our worldly actions. So you look at these and you think, is this worth spending my time doing this? Is this bringing me genuine happiness? If it isn't, you start to change your mind here. You start to think, well, why isn't it bringing me genuine happiness? Basically, why am I still here in samsara? And that was a good time to look at impermanence, the nature of impermanence. And we went into that in some depth, looking at what was impermanent. And the biggest impermanence of all, which is death. And mostly the 8 worldly dharmas just waste your time until you're dying. And then you're dying and you wish you hadn't wasted your time. All we're saying is, in the Dharma, you wake up now. You wake up now. So if you're not going to spend your time on 8 worldly dharmas, what are you going to do? So then we looked at karma. And we realized quite quickly that karma is not cause and effect, it's cause. We went a bit deeper and we said it's not just cause, it's the intention, the motivation behind it. And more than that, it's the urge behind the intention. And it's important to recognize that because our motivation is both gross. I am motivated to sip this, I sip it. But there's a much finer intention that goes with every moment of mind. And sometimes we behave in such a way without intending to do so because we have the habit to do so. We have a very subtle intention to do it. So we work on our karma that's gross, that we can deal with, and we catch that subtler energy earlier and earlier and earlier. And the earlier you can catch this urge, the earlier you can deal with it. So this becomes very important. So if every movement of mind is karma, we're creating karma all the time. Not just this lifetime, but previous lifetimes. What do we do about it? Well, the Dharma is, again, very clear. It says, look, what you do now is you look behind you. And you think of all the negativities you've done in this lifetime and other lifetimes, and you purify. And we did some time on that looking at purification, applying the 4 opponent powers of regret, reliance, the remedy, and the resolve. It is possible to purify negative karma. Don't be under any illusion here. That's possible. Depending on your understanding and the strength of your regret, basically, but all the 4 powers. Employ all the 4 powers, you'll start to purify these negative karmas. Then you look forward. And forward means, what do I do now? Well, I behave ethically. I look at positive karma, I look at negative karma. And basically, I just stop the negative. Just stop doing it. But more than just stop doing it, realizing that if you continue to do it, what the consequences are. And with that fully in mind, you make an intention not to commit it, and then you don't commit it. And that's the only way to turn something negative into something positive. Just not doing negative karma is not enough. Not enough. So we looked at that. That was pretty clear. And then we said to ourselves, well, is this really true? You know, if I'm going to walk this path and I need all that, do I trust the path? Do I trust it? And that's where the idea of refuge comes in. So you study. You study the three jewels of refuge: the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And generally speaking, you can say the Buddha is like a doctor, the Dharma is like the medicine, and the Sangha are like the nurses and doctors that help, the nurses that help you along the way. You can say it's very broad, but it's there. You can see that. But it's up to you. You need to study that, and you need to say, if I'm going to walk this path, I need to have reliance. I need to have something I can rely on. I have to rely that what the Buddha said is true. I have to realize that the Dharma as presented, the pure Dharma, will take me there. And I need to value the friends I have around me that are following the same path. You know those type of friends, the ones that don't think you're crazy because you do prostrations. You know those friends, they're important. Once you get the handle on that, right, you're going to start saying to yourself now, okay, but now I have to be really clear what the problem is. Really, really clear about what the problem is. And the first thing the Buddha taught, the first thing was the Four Noble Truths. That was the first teaching he gave, the Four Noble Truths. It's interesting to note that none of these Four Noble Truths are to be believed. It's really important. So the first noble truth you may remember is suffering. You're not to believe that, but you have to fully understand it. Fully understand it. The second noble truth is that there is an origin to all this. It just isn't there. There is an origin. You're not to believe that. You're to find it and abandon it. The third noble truth, all the suffering can stop. Suffering is not the same nature as the mind, and so it can be stopped. So do it. Stop. The fourth noble truth, there is a path to the cessation, not to be believed, to be cultivated. Now, why is it important to understand the difference? It's important to understand the difference because from a Judeo-Christian point of view, it's all about belief, 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 belief. Dharma is all about doing, 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 doing. Dharma is all about responsibility, internal, my responsibility. I walk the path. No one can do it for me. I have to realize this. Teachers are important, of course they are. Dharma centers like this are so vital, I can't tell you. Without these Dharma centers, we couldn't do this. All of this is important, but you walk the path. So it has to become your Dharma, not anybody else's. Now, if you think about this, suffering, that is a result, isn't it? We're thinking about karma now. That's a result. The origin is a cause, isn't it? It's a cause. Does that make sense? The cessation, the third noble truth, is that a cause or a result? It's a result. And the path is a cause. Now, normally, if you're thinking about this, you would always teach cause and result. That's logical, isn't it? But what did the Buddha teach? He taught first of all the result, then the cause, then a result, and then a cause. Why? Because if there's one thing we can all get our hands on and understand, is at least at some stage, is suffering. Because that is the problem. Nothing else. Suffering. Now, within the Dharma, if you start looking up texts to do with sufferings, they'll say things like there are 12 types of suffering, and you just go, oh no. Mm-hmm. And then some texts will say there are 6 types of suffering. So you feel a bit better about that. You go, it's not bad, it's 12. And then you find some wonderful texts that say, actually, there's only 3 types of suffering. And these 3 types, it's subsumed all the suffering. And I don't know about you, but I can handle 3. Yeah, I can handle 3. The first type of suffering is the one that we all agree about, isn't it? Pain, discomfort of body or mind. Yes? All been there? Okay. What I want you to do now, and nobody argues about this type of suffering because we've all been there. What I'd like you to do now, though, is just quietly think to yourself about the type of mental and physical suffering that you've had up to date. Just bring it to mind. The earliest you can remember suffering physically or mentally. For some of you, it will be quite a lot. For others, not so much. For some, it will be more mental than physical, and for others, more physical than mental. Now I'd like you to project forward. Let's say you're all going to live to at least 100 years old. I'd like you to think now of what's coming. Physical and mental suffering, if you live long enough. Buddhism is all about the joy. Okay, relax. Why is it important to think this far forward? It's important because often we have the idea that when we die, we'll be in the same condition as we are in now, just somehow just magically older, but not any more physically or mentally bothered. Never going to happen. You live long enough, there's a gradual deterioration of everything. Yes? Okay. So when you think about suffering, physical suffering, this is how you think about it. Project it forward. Now, if that was the only type of suffering, I think to yourself, well, suck it up, you'll be fine. But no. The second type of suffering is called the suffering of change. Suffering of change. We talked about what keeps us in bondage in this lifetime. And I said that one of the major bondages was, if you imagine yourself tied up in ropes, one of the major ropes that's really keeping you tied to suffering is not seeing the nature of reality, not seeing the nature of causality. This other major rope of bondage is not seeing suffering as it is in yourself or others. Somehow glossing over it. But the other bondage of suffering that we have that keeps us in samsara is the bondage that urges us to see suffering situations and mislabel them happiness. This is our big problem. Big problem. We see that which is suffering as happiness. We have to look at this. We have to look at it clearly. Now, there's several ways of looking at this. One way is to say something like, most of our happiness is a temporary cessation of suffering. It's a hiatus between suffering events. So you can think like that. Lama Zopa Rinpoche often says, when like you've got a headache, right? And you're suffering. You take some paracetamol, the headache goes away, you're happy. This is the problem. We label that as happiness. Now you put that situation in other things. We label a lot of things as happiness when actually what they are is a temporary cessation of suffering, a hiatus between suffering events. So they're not everything, but an awful lot. When you start to think about it, an awful lot. The other way we mistake suffering and label it happiness, are you happy? I'm really happy. Ah, that's good. Yeah. What's happening here is we don't see the changing nature of what's going on. And because we don't see the changing nature of what's going on, and everything is open to change, we mislabel something that really is in its nature suffering or will cause us suffering as a happy event. What's wrong with that? So for instance, you have a nice piece of cake. And it's nice, isn't it? You eat it and you think, oh, it's very nice. Now here's what's going on. You're eating that cake. Are you getting pleasure? Yes. You're not hungry anymore. You've got what you wanted, and you're experiencing some pleasure. You are. But you see, what the mind doesn't do, the mind doesn't say things like, that's pleasure, and then leave it there. Oh no, the mind says, I feel pleasure, and that gave me pleasure. And so we mislabel the object as the object of pleasure. We're seeing external objects as being the cause of our happiness. And this is a huge error. It's huge because we know logically that if I ate more of that cake, it would make me sick. I know that. But how could something that I am viewing as being the source of my happiness make me sick? How can it? If it were the source of my happiness, it would just bring me more happiness, wouldn't it? But it doesn't. Just doesn't. Now think about it. Everything is a bit like that. I'm sitting here and I'm quite happy. I'm kind of a wee bit bruised today, so kind of sitting down is really good. So I'm quite happy. Are you happy sitting there, Mary? I'm delighted. But if I was sitting here for a few hours, what would happen? I would start to feel very stiff and quite painful, and I would be quite unhappy. But how is that possible? My mind has labelled the fact that I can sit in this chair as happiness. If the mind just thought for this moment, at this moment in time, you've got a cessation of suffering of being tired, and there's a wee bit of pleasure, but it doesn't do that. It does the opposite. It says this is the source. It forces you to always see externally these objects as the source of genuine happiness. And then we 100% believe it. We believe it 100%. And then we're shocked. We're really shocked when it doesn't bring us. We know, don't we? We think you go into a relationship, and it's everything you wanted. It's absolutely, you can see it. The source, if they're happy, I'm happy. Oh my Lord, really? But after a while, what happens? They become the source of your misery. Many times. And I don't care if this is a partner, if it's your mother, your father, your child. What we're doing is seeing them as the source of your happiness, but what it is, it's an object that keeps changing. It's an object that can bring you what? It can bring you temporary relief of suffering. It might bring you temporary happiness. That's possible. Of course it's possible. Temporary. But we don't see it as temporary. And then when we get hurt, we're absolutely shocked. Really shocked. We have to see the changing nature of everything. And this is why impermanence is important. You have to see the changing nature. And remember when we did impermanence, I said, how we normally see impermanence is we see something as solid and unchanging is how we see it. But we logically understand that could break. Something could hit it and it could break, right? And an external event could make that disappear. But that's not the impermanence I'm talking about here with change. The impermanence I'm talking about here is, by its very nature, it is changing. From the moment it comes into existence, it is changing. From the moment it comes into existence, it is breaking up. See it for what it is, and that is not the source of your happiness. Does it mean that all Buddhists have got to be miserable? No. You can be much happier by not investing. Do not invest in external things that make you happy. Don't do it, because they'll turn around and bite you. It's their nature. It's their nature. But maybe not. Maybe the Dharma's wrong. No, it's possible. So what you want to do now is just think. And I'd like you to bring to mind now, maybe an individual that brings you, just to meet this individual, just to be with this individual, makes you happy. Also bring an object to your mind. As soon as I think that, I think my iPad, Bring an object to your mind that really, when you have it and it's working great, it is happy. Bring it to mind. Choose one from your life, a person, an object, that without thinking, it is a source of happiness for you. It's not obvious to you, to any of us, that this object, person, or phenomena, that its nature is suffering. That's not obvious. So now look deeply. Can these objects, will these objects, at some stage, cause you suffering? Be really honest. Go into all the situations that could occur. Could this object of your happiness bring you suffering? If so, how? Okay. So I'm always interested at this stage. Is there anything that anyone's thought of, or any person, that will not bring them suffering? I'm always open for this. Really? Nothing?
Buddha.
Buddha. As an object and phenomena. Possible. I think if you rely on an external Buddha, without the Buddha within you responding to that, difficult. Difficult. Is the Buddha a permanent phenomenon? But it's worth thinking about. But what about the things and the people we come in contact with every day? The things that we really label as happiness. Do they make you happy? I mean, truly. Are there people that you meet that bring you joy? Of course there are. Life would be boring without that, huh? That's true, isn't it? And there's certain objects that we care about more than others. But look at how we view them, if our mind rests on them, see how the mind is drawing outwards to see that as permanent and unchanging. See what happens when you start to see the nature of change. Anything external to you that comes about through causes and conditions is at best temporary. At worst, it's illusory, yet we believe it 100%. So we have to start seeing the nature of change. This doesn't mean that we become more unhappy. It means we become more realistic. And we know, don't we? I mean, if you've ever had something important to you that breaks or suddenly doesn't work, the pain, the worry, the anxiety, the time that we spend, it's out of proportion to its nature. And we think things like, oh my God, so-and-so died? Yes. Oh, how did that happen? Well, he was 99 and had a heart condition and was playing golf and had just scored a hole in one. Oh yeah, but this is what we're like. Yeah, but. It doesn't mean that you become hard. See, some people think that. It's not that you become hard. You're just becoming more realistic. What you'll find is you'll get more joy without falling into the trap of seeing it as permanent. Any questions about that? Because this thing about change is not really that difficult, but it is one of the bonds because we mislabel it. This happiness, this temporary, illusory, we label that as happiness. And of course, if that's what you see as happiness, then you invest your time, your energy, and your money in getting more. And then you're sucked right back into the Dharmas, quick as a flash. We've been doing this lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. It's about time to stop. Any questions about that?
I'd like to ask how you have a chance against attachment, because I understand that it arises immediately as you touch something like the object of your desire, whatever. Say it's a
We're going to come to that, but you're right.
Yeah. So
Almost a confidence.
And it arises immediately.
Yes.
How do you get around it?
You catch it earlier and earlier and earlier. Attachment doesn't just happen. Attachment comes about due to causes and conditions. Attachment is a construct of the mind. It is not the same nature as the mind. Therefore, they can be got rid of. Easily? No. But other things come with attachment. If you look at this handout that I gave you some time ago on the causes and conditions of suffering, do you all have that? Anybody not got one? I have some spares.
Yes.
You see, this is a good question. This is a good question. Oh, yeah. Another one? I had some more printed. This is why it's so important to know how suffering comes about and what the origin is. If you look at this again, right at the very beginning, now this is presented linearly like this, but actually in reality, this is happening all at once, more or less. It feels like all at once, but just to understand it, we put it like this. Right at the very beginning, the ignorance of the selflessness of persons and object. We see things as having a permanent self. We see ourselves as having something within us that is unchanging by its own nature, existing by its own nature, this permanent self. And more than that, we see it in everybody else and we see it in all objects. So basically, every time our five senses occur and touch an object, which is like every second, there is ignorance, right at the very beginning, and also ignorance of causality. And as you say, right along with that comes, there's the three poisons. The main one is ignorance, comes attachment and aversion. Because the ignorance is saying, there is me, the self, and with me comes I and mine. And as soon as me, I, and mine comes in, you get attachment to the me, the I, and the mine. And you have aversion to things that seem to contradict me, I, and mine. Comes very quickly. These are the other two poisons, right? Once this poison is flowing in our mind, all the afflictive emotions come from that. Anger, hatred, jealousy, covetousness, wrong views. Any delusion you think of comes now. It's now there because of the three poisons. The ignorance gets of me, mine, and mine gives rise immediately to attachment and aversion. That seeds the mind for all the other delusions. They come thick and fast because as soon as I see this permanent me, I, and mine, then who's getting jealous? My body's not getting jealous. My mind's not getting jealous. No. My knees are not getting jealous. My concepts are not getting jealous. What's getting jealous is this permanent, unchanging self that needs protecting 24 hours a day. Right? From these huge karmic delusions brought about by the three poisons, then we start behaving. And we behave with our body, speech, and mind. Now, how could we be behaving with our body, speech, and mind positively when right at the very beginning, we're seeing everything incorrectly? We must know the whole of reality. Because we must know the whole of reality, we see things that are without self as having self. The attachment, the aversion, all the delusions. We're going to behave positively? Not really. We'll sometimes do good things, of course. And we'll sometimes behave well, of course. And we'll sometimes say really good things to benefit people, and of course we do. And is this good? Of course it's good. But dig deep, and actually not that deep. And it's still based on ignorance. And anything based on ignorance can never be a source of genuine happiness. Can't do it. Because it has the source of its own destruction right there. And that leads to suffering. So if you remember when I looked at this before, as Geshe Tashi said, what can you do? You know this is happening, but it's almost like immediately, what can you do? If you're sensible, you tack it both ways. If you see this whole progression like a car that moves, if you can hit the ignorance, if you can start seeing things as they are, the selflessness of self and phenomena, that ignition will never turn in the car. It doesn't matter if that car's in tip-top condition. It's full of fuel, everything's working well, but if there's no key to that ignition, it's going nowhere. This is what's happening. However, learning this bit is tough. We've got lifetime after lifetime of seeing things in a certain way. So you study this, you get closer and closer, basically through understanding impermanence and dependent arising. But here's what you do first. You watch your actions of body, speech, and mind. And Geshe Tashi said, this is like taking the wheels off the car. If you've got that car, you take the wheels off. Even if you're turning the ignition, the car's going nowhere. So how do you get a grasp on attachment? By getting a grasp on your actions of body, speech, and mind. Behaving within the laws of causality, learning to meditate, catching yourself earlier and earlier and earlier. And then what happens is, you'll feel the attachment arise. You'll feel the aversion. Before you do anything of body, speech, and mind, you'll get a taste of the attachment, a taste of the aversion, and you work on it then. Not all the time, but you'll be able to do it. And if you're also working on understanding the nature of reality, you're going to meet. And once you meet, you have liberation. If you see things as they actually are, imagine you've got this now. Imagine you've studied, you've meditated, and in the meditation, you're getting a glimpse of how things are, just glimpses. You come out of meditation, but everything seems exactly the same. So you go back to your meditation, analytical, single-pointed, and then after a while, so they say what happens in meditation is you see things clearly in meditation as they are. You're a very happy bunny. However, when you come out, you're still seeing things incorrectly. But you start to get glimpses of how things are outside of meditation. And then one day, not only are you seeing it, you're seeing reality in meditation, you're seeing reality outside of meditation. And then you're free, totally free. How is that possible? If you see things as they are, there is no me, I, and mine to protect. It doesn't exist. You can't see it. I mean, it just doesn't there. If there's no me, I, and mine to protect, there's no delusions. There's no anger. There's no jealousy. There's no fear. There's no guilt. There's no self to feel that. You're still around, by the way, having a really nice time. But there's no idea of a concrete self. If there's no anger and jealousy and these delusions, then you're going to be still behaving in the world with body, speech, and mind. Could it possibly be negative? If you start from this end, how could your speech and your actions and your thoughts be negative? They won't be positive because they'll be in accordance with reality. If your actions of body, speech, and mind are in accordance with reality, are you going to cause suffering? No. You're free. Do you see? This is how it works. His Holiness says, His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, all of this, liberation itself, can be understood through logic. Why? Because emptiness can be understood through logic. The nature of reality can be understood through logic. Now, what he's saying here is can be understood. And he says that because it's really important that you intellectually understand emptiness, but that is not enough. It really is not enough. There are plenty of academics around now who really fully understand the nature of reality, logically. But they don't take the next step, and that's to realize it in meditation. And if they don't realize it in meditation and taste it, there's no subject and object, you see it, then they can't see it outside of meditation. So although His Holiness says this could be understood through logic, it doesn't mean to say you could achieve it through logic, but that's the first step. You need to understand this intellectually, and then you need to put it into. Okay, you've got 10 minutes in groups of no more than 4. I want you to look at this again and discuss it. I want you to talk to each other, see how this progresses. If there's anything you don't understand, see if you can teach each other what it is. Primarily, if you start from wisdom, what happens here? If you start from ignorance, where we all are, okay, you have 10 minutes. No more than groups of 4. Thank you so much. Talking, discussing. Nice.
Very sweet green. Yeah, yes. Yeah. And it's based on ignorance. It's very in this case, very specific.
Doesn't have any power itself. I mean, just.
It has power.
Then you do it again.
Maybe if you make something easy,
I don't know. Like,
this is ignorance and delusion is very together. We see it as she says in the wrong way. And it's especially because of this very strong sense of very solid or a very solid view of that. That means the emotions of either reduction or aversion. So, because I really like the please don't go. And then oh, because I really like it. I just don't want to see you anybody. And that already is if not, then at least me. I just don't want to see you go, even if I do say
The attachment is like before you don't go.
What's that mean? What's that mean?
So I guess what I'm saying is, how do you, yeah.
idea in the car. I think, let's say, in my case, maybe I cannot see it here, but at least I know so at least take one wheel of the car. Nice to see.
If you are aware of, what you said, something
And I get fed and things, something.
Men du läser ju nästan
It's like, how do I work with seeing the situation, what it is, the reality of the situation. I know that they are them and they are not willing to make me happy.
Och vi har oss.
But how
Det är också det. Dabei geschneit war. Mit dabei gerüstet.
Are you there?
Oh, er ist ja.
Mentally.
You're right, a good point. Because tell yourself, how do you know? That is a question. And how do you know? Was there meditation something to hold on to at that point? And if you discover that there's no self, that would be great. I don't have to hold on to this attachment of a memory that once was taken happiness. That's not the reason. Exactly. Because if I didn't know that these self what they come to do, then I can never have attachment. In fact, I just don't have attachment. Maybe I'll be sorry.
And also,
You go out in the dictionary. Buddhism doesn't talk about ego because ego comes from translation of Freud. And this only from nothing. Into something that was tangible.
Mas os gostos,
yeah, and it's not.
If you take all of that away and you just say, what is it? Those words come into your thoughts. The alarm should go off. Why? Because I'm my identity is that idea of self. I am that child, I am that adult. And I'm trying to somehow, by memories, by maintaining them, and then do everything to feed that. So I am an I run. I run every morning. And what happens if I can't run every morning? My eye is in danger. The identity I run. So we have to. Every life should be observation. How we get rid of the I. We keep doing that. But we keep doing it. So we have to the one way is we recognize the alarm bells. And it's not the case. It's the way that I say I from me. Then you can look at them. They will not run. I will not run. So well, exactly, and that's even I don't have to attach to this one. Because that's I'm not the one that has it. So I've got good time, I've got patience. You can achieve anything in this lifetime. And achieve
Thank you so much.
You can just
Thank you.
So, is there anything that came out of your discussion about this process? Understanding, of course, that when it's happening, it's all together. This is a way of looking at it to be able to understand it and to be able to catch it. But really, every moment of mind, every movement of mind is causing karma. So, it's happening a lot. That's why we need meditation. So, anything come out of your discussions?
we found an example about how the attachment to self can go through the whole process.
Uh-huh.
For instance, if somebody blames you for being not a good parent,
Yes.
then immediately you have this reaction of aversion
Yes.
because it's so important for you to be perfect in
Absolutely.
everything.
Yeah.
And that's very strong attachment to self. And so you react with your body, speech, and mind.
Yes.
And very often you will just be angry and maybe shout and do harmful things. And then you create a lot of negative karma and you hurt that other person and you hurt yourself.
And it doesn't stop there.
No, it will probably create a lot. That person will now be hurt because they wanted to help you in your bringing up the kids. Now you have hurt that person and they will of course have a really bad day too and create other. So it's a huge.
And you've got the habit of reacting like this, which has been habit of previous lifetimes,
Yes, yes.
and will become habit
Yeah.
of future lifetimes. Yes.
And we thought about that maybe if you work with in the wisdom end and also in the meditation
Yeah.
end, because our experience is that you
Wisdom and
really,
method.
you
Wisdom
really
and
need
method.
them both
You do.
to gain any results. But it would
To
be
ex-
so nice and you would feel so free if somebody came
Yeah.
to you and said, I really think you did a bad job with your child in that situation. And you could say, oh, okay, what do you mean? How? And be honestly interested in that other person's critique and to be a better parent and not, be so attached to being perfect and all that. So, and you would stop that reaction very early.
You would stop the reaction with you.
Yes, exactly.
But sometimes, if you don't behave the way another person expects you to behave, i.e. get angry,
Yeah.
they could actually react with more anger. You're not listening to me. I'm telling you this. So how do you react then?
But if I was really totally free,
Yes.
if I was, that anger would not affect me. I
Why
would be
not?
patient because I can't be harmed because I'm not here. I'm here, of course, but it doesn't. It's
There's
not so
nothing for-
important
Yes.
to me to be perfect. I don't care. I don't
There is-
mind.
There's no concrete I to
Yeah.
here.
Exactly. Yeah.
There is an I.
Yes. but it's
Conventionally,
just
when we do this on Saturday, we'll see that we do it. Of course, we exist,
So
but not the way we think. But not the way we
Not
think.
not the way we think. And then we also found out that when we do a meditation practice, a mindfulness practice over a longer period and do it steadily, then the way that you are sort of struck by other people's words and actions, it's like you become more like rubber. You're not like, it's more like boing, boing, boing.
Yeah.
So,
There's no Velcro. I think you said there's no Velcro.
No
You
Velcro.
don't get the
and it's like everything is more soft. It's not so painful.
Exactly.
It's slower. It's easier.
You see, this is what we don't believe. We think that if we start behaving like this, somehow we'll become boring. Somebody said that to me, but Mary, it sounds boring to me. And I'm going, what? Really, people think that. It sounds as if I won't be happy very much. And I'm saying the opposite is true. You will become happier. You will become freer. You will be the least boring person on the planet. Really. Because behaving like this gives you so much. And one of the things it gives you is energy. We are not aware until something quite nasty happens how much energy we spend on rubbish. Not just external rubbish, but the internal rubbish stories we tell ourselves lifetime after lifetime. Let those go. You will have more energy. And you will attract people. You attract people. There are people in this life, mind you, I'm not really that into charisma, but if you look at the lamas and the teachers, who really worked with this, I mean, they attract people. They're the least boring people I've ever met. And they're also the happiest. One of the great lies is that if we change this way of thinking, we will become boring or unhappy. And the opposite is true. But the self, this concrete idea, is trying to protect itself. Thank you. Thank you. It's reasonable, isn't it?
Yes,
Anything else come out?
How can we perhaps maintain the delight of an experience? You spoke about delight before, because
Yes.
so we had food and eating and the cake, the famous cake. So we know this might cause us suffering, or our whole experience is so ingrained.
Yes.
But then, so the art would be to take absolute delight in this absolute moment
Yes.
that we're experiencing,
Yes.
but also to be able to let it go at that very same moment.
Well, delight, rejoicing, is the natural state of your mind. Clarity is its nature, as we've said before. The nature of the mind is clarity. Its function is to be aware, right? But more than that, part of the nature of the mind is luminosity. Luminosity. And with that luminosity and clarity comes complete joy. You will have more joy. You won't have to inflict joy on something. You'll just be aware of the joy.
Luminosity being light.
It's more than that. It's more than light. It's that which makes everything apparent. So it becomes a natural state, not requiring external objects for it to occur.
So we found this, we had a very interesting discussion, and it also led to the self. And it's because we are holding on to an identity, a concept of our identity. So that cake is reinforcing our identity at some level. Maybe it's the child, because it's association to a memory. We're holding on to that memory.
Okay.
It
We're not getting into therapy here. You know how I'm.
No.
Because you know I'm not good at that. Right?
It's doing whatever responses.
I understand. No, I'm not making fun. I'm being
So-
quite clear. I don't get it, but I understand.
So
what
I
you're saying.
am enjoying this cake, and then we can say, who's the I here?
Okay.
So and how old is that I? Is it this version right now in this moment? And who is that?
And eventually all that will go.
Yes.
Just goes. Just goes. All those concepts go.
And we arrive at this point through logic.
This is so important. I can't tell you how important it is to understand this logically. And then use that logic in analytical meditation. And then in your analytical meditation, when you get where you need to be mentally, you let that go. And then you taste it mentally and stay with the taste. And this is one thing that you learn about meditation. You learn when to be analytical and when to be single pointed in your concentration. And then when that comes together, it's very sweet, very sweet. Anything else come up?
We talked about different, more personal cases. But,
It's good to be personal. It makes it real.
And I'm thinking now, perhaps something that you said was, it's very important to be aware at least of the suffering.
Yes, yes.
You said,
Listen,
and
it's so primary. I get people come time and time again who've had really heavy teachings. I mean, really good stuff. Tantric practitioners, and they've told me about it, and I'm going, and inside I'm thinking, I couldn't do that. What they're doing, I couldn't do. You know, really. And sometimes though the problem comes up, and they don't like it, but I say, you know, really what the problem? They say, what do you think the problem is made of? You don't want to ask me, you know, because I know what my answer is. It's clear that you haven't grasped what suffering is. You really haven't got that. You know, sometimes you get suffering and then you forget it, because we've had lifetimes of not really looking at this, so you've got to forget it. But you know, sometimes you can give yourself your own answer. Give yourself, 9 times out of 10, why am I suffering? Because you don't understand suffering itself. Really. It's that simple. But what makes it difficult? What really makes it difficult, this whole thing, is that I said there was 3 types of suffering, didn't I? We've not hit the third one. And the third one is really the one that anchors us to samsara. The other two are important, particularly the suffering of change. The third one is what anchors us, really ties us down to samsara. And that's called all-pervasive compounded suffering. Have you heard of this one? Sometimes called the suffering of suffering. And here's the biggie. This is the thing, isn't it? What this is saying to you, this third type of suffering, is that merely having this body and mind combination, it is totally controlled by delusion and karma. And therefore, just by being in this situation, we have within it the origin of suffering. And what they tend to say is the five aggregates are in of themselves controlled by delusion and karma. And so when these five aggregates, the body and mind combo, are together, this is the suffering of suffering. Suffering is not seen as external to this. It's seen as happening within. And this is hard. This is more difficult. Because again, we've got the habit of seeing suffering as external to us. Something has happened. Remember impermanence. We think things are impermanent because something outside happens and makes it impermanent. But wisdom tells you that it's actually the nature of that object that makes it impermanent. And in the same way, the suffering of suffering is saying that simply because we have this body-mind combination, we have suffering. This is not pessimistic, but it shows you how difficult it can be. So now what we do, let's really think about this. I want you to really think about your body, inside your body and outside your body. Try to feel it, taste it, touch it, squeeze it. Feel the heart, the lungs. Just get in contact with every part of your body. Don't leave any of it out. There is not one part of this body, internal or external, that isn't under the control of delusion and karma. Not one part. So now mentally scan your feelings. And by feelings, I'm talking about all your five senses and how it reacts to the world. Your thoughts and ideas. Scan the whole gambit of your feelings. There is not one of those feelings that is not under the control of delusion and karma. Then there's the aggregate of discrimination. Now that's like feelings, but it's feelings with judgment. It's feelings that recognize physical and mental objects. This discrimination. There is not one discrimination that we make that is not controlled by afflictive emotions, delusions, and karma. Then we move to the fourth aggregate, called volitional factors. Now, these are all the mental events, mental formations that direct our mind to positive, negative, neutral actions. All karma here, attention, intention, ill will, hate, the idea of self, all of that's included here. Not one of them that is not under the control of delusion and karma. Not one. The fifth aggregate, consciousness itself. Not one moment of consciousness that is not under the control of afflictive emotion, delusion, and karma. Not one moment. So when we consider this third type of suffering, the suffering of suffering, this is the bare fact of our unenlightened existence. These five aggregates are the dukkha, the discontentment of attachment. Because they're the basis on which we impute I, me, mine, self. Is there any hope? Yes. We need to wake up and we need to see that all of these delusions, all of this suffering is impermanent. Because they're impermanent, they're construct, we can deconstruct them and rid ourselves of them. There are methods available to us right now to be able to do that. And given our precious human rebirth, we can use these methods. They're not that difficult. But they are unusual. And they're contrary to our habit. We need wisdom. And we need good methods. Above all, we need compassion for ourselves and others. We need to recognize we already have that within ourselves, in our Buddha nature. No one needs to give it to us. We have it already. We just need to clear out the rubbish and allow that Buddha potential to grow. We can do this because the origin, the second noble truth, the origin of our suffering is not external to suffering itself. It's within suffering. It's within our ignorance and our delusions. The origin of suffering coexists with our suffering. So if we can get rid of suffering, we can abandon the origin. How is it possible to abandon all of that? Because there isn't one delusion, one afflictive emotion, one aspect of karma that is not impermanent. There is not one delusion that is the same nature as our mind. It is a different nature. It can never affect the mind itself, only obscure it. Because they came about by causes and conditions, we can work with this and eliminate them. However bad we feel we've been, however negative, makes no difference. They're constructs, they can be deconstructed. Who you really are, what you really are, is your Buddha nature and Buddha potential. You are clarity and knowing as deep as the sky. But you need to make a choice whether to identify with the vastness of the sky, the vastness of space, or you continue to identify with the clouds, the temporary delusions. There is a choice. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to turn that into a meditation. Just a bit carried away. Because sometimes when you talk about the third type of suffering, it sounds just, you need to know it though. You need to know there isn't an aspect of your body-mind combo, this 5 aggregates, that isn't under the control of delusion or karma. And once you get that, it's almost like it's too much. There's no wiggle room. The first type of suffering, okay, I can deal with that. The second time is a bit tricky, but yeah, I can come to grips with that. But this third type, once you really get it, it seems too overwhelming. But it's not overwhelming. It can be dealt with. It takes practice, but the methods are there. They're just there. And when you start employing it, you're the one that evaluates how it's going. And this is what's meant when they say nobody else can free you but yourself. So really good to understand the nature of mind. That's always helpful. Any ideas about that? Questions?
So is there still space for free will? It sounds like, at least in the beginning, you have very little choices to make. Actually, everything is under the control of delusions.
I know. Interesting. There's been lots of papers written about free will. And I've heard a lot of conclusions. when someone asked His Holiness the Dalai Lama about free will, said, is there such a thing as free will? He said, absolutely. You can make a choice. But I've also heard him say, a lot of the choices you make are habit. And they come from that intention, that motivation, that urge that goes with each moment of mind. You've habituated your mind in this way. Is there wiggle room? Yeah.
Is there what?
Wiggle, what we call wiggle room, a room for maneuver. Yeah. Some of the best things I've read about free will, well, when I say best, that's not, I don't mean academically, I mean the ones I actually understand. That's really what I mean. Some of the papers written by Alan Wallace on free will, I can get to grips with that. I can get to grips with that. They're worth looking at. If you were to say to me, is there such a thing as free will? I would have to say yes. But it would be qualified. Because a lot of what we think of as free will, the problem with going too far down that route is the idea that, well, what can you do? Now, we know there has to be such a thing as free will because you can change it. You can get rid of these delusions and your intentions can become purer and purer and purer. So obviously it has to be there. Otherwise, you would just be a creature of habit continuously going. And that's not the case. But it's subtle. It's very, very subtle. How do you get at it? I think, personally, I've always felt this way. You start with all these things, start gross. And I use that word gross, and it's used in Buddhism a lot. Gross, less gross, medium gross and fine, or gross, subtle and very subtle. They use these levels. And mostly what they mean by gross is everything we're doing on this level. Hi, I'm smiling. It's a gross effect. Yes, gross. I think that if you start making intelligent, wise, free will decisions on a gross level, yes, it's going to be underpinned by a lot of habit, and you're going to be, but you start doing that and you make that habit. I think what happens is you start subtly making, and actually not just subtly making better choices, but you catch these choices early. It's almost as if you begin to see the ramifications of the bad choices. This is why it's important to always understand with karma what the consequences are if you continue to act negatively. If you understand that, then free will has got more of a chance. And then I think you start acting subtler and subtler and subtler. And then I think you get to the stage where it's total free will. But I think our understanding of free will changes. It changes with our understanding. I would really highly recommend some of the reasonable writings on Wallace on free will. I would definitely do that because I found them to be quite inspiring. But it's like almost everything in life. Because I don't have a quick, my brain is not that. I tend to think, well, just deal with people now the way you. I've always thought, act the way you want to be. Really, it's so much easier. Act the way you want to be. Then one day you wake up, that's exactly how you are. Okay. But sometimes we want the intellectual stuff first and then build up. And it's good, that's good. But sometimes just be. Make the choices that are wise. You know they're wise. Oh, I don't feel like it. Sort that. Just do it. Just do it often enough. I think that becomes more subtle. But that doesn't mean you stop the intellectual bit. No, you have to keep going with that. So no tough question there, Renee. Anything else that came up?
Like we've covered this, you said we get rid of negative emotions. I want to know where they go.
No. I think they just, when we answer that type of question, and it's a good question, we have to think about the concepts we're using now, right? So when I think of an emotion or a thought or a bad thought or a good thought, it has the connotation in my mind as being something solid. It has the connotation in my mind as being something real, which I now have to deal with. The truth is that's not the case. These thoughts, ideas, and emotions, these attachments, do not have any energy in and of themselves. They only have the energy that we give it. And you can see this if you do simple meditations, and all my meditations tend to be very simple, but if you literally sit with yourself and you allow the thoughts to come, just allow them to come. Often when you do that, nothing comes, have you noticed? When you try to think of nothing, your mind is crowded. When you want thoughts to come into your mind, nothing happens. It's just perverse. It's just absolutely perverse. But anyway, you sit there long enough, thoughts, even the thought of boredom, something will come up, right? If you sit with it. Now, I'm not talking here mindfulness here. I'm not going down, I'm going some, I mean, I don't think I am anyway. But allow that thought to come up. And then with slight curiosity, no more than that, kind of just mentally go, what happens to the thought? If you give it no energy, it disappears. It literally disappears. Now, it may come up again, especially if it's a strong and habitual thought. It'll come up again. But if you give it no, I'm not saying ignore it because that's giving it energy. I'm not saying ignore it. Just kind of. It hangs about trying to get your attention and then it disappears. Why does this happen? It happens because it has no substance. However, a thought comes and you go, oh my God, that's awful, that's really bad. Yeah, I understand, and that was true. And I remember when you did that, and that's just like my mother. And the next thing you know, you've got a whole story and it's solid and it's sitting in your mind and it's going nowhere. And you make it strong and you make it real and your focus is there. Somebody walks in the room and you go, oh hi, what happened to it? Where did it go? It only has the energy you focus. Now that's interesting. But once you do that for a while, you get a bit bored, eh? Because meditation can be like that. So the next thing you can do is as the thought comes and you don't give it any energy, right? And it disappears. Become interested in where it's gone. Just become interested. Don't analyze it. Just become interested. Ooh. Mentally, you're going, ooh. You've got your answer. You've got your answer. All thoughts and ideas are like that. Don't have to take my word, just do it. You know that you could be in a really bad mood, and you've built yourself up, and you've got just cause. Because let's face it, there's nothing better than righteous anger, right? You've every right to be angry, and you're going to make sure you're angry for a good long time and that everybody knows about it. You really feed it, right? Then something happens, and your mind's taken away from it. And you do something, you come back, and where did it go? Oh yeah, you have to build it up again. I'm angry and I have every right to be angry, and you build it up again. Why? But we suffer, don't we? We have these thoughts and we can cry and we can get really upset. So in meditation, you learn to look at things like this. You have to be courageous. It takes courage to do this, especially with real things, things that have really happened to you, that have hurt you. This takes courage to face them. But you need to have some wisdom here. The compassion you're feeling for yourself by doing this meditation has got to be married with wisdom. If you have compassion and no wisdom, you've got bondage. Okay. We all know people who have got a lot of compassion, a lot of emotion, no wisdom. And so they suffer a lot. Now, I'm sorry, but I suffer enough for myself. Why should I get involved with secondhand suffering? Why, if I've got enough suffering for myself, why should I suffer for somebody else? I'm sorry. It doesn't make any sense. But with no wisdom, you can do that. You can do that.
Can I ask you a question in this aspect? Because our time and age. A lot of things are happening right now, of course, with terror attacks and refugees and the government with their decisions. And it's, I think a lot of people are really feeling a lot of anger and pain and frustration
Sure.
because of the situation. And you really would love everybody to be good friends and stop behaving this way. And so, do you have a suggestion for how to deal with these things? Could you tell us, please?
Bodhicitta.
Yes, and practically, is there meditation?
Bodhicitta.
Is it like Tonglen or?
Right in the heart of bodhicitta. Yes.
Yeah.
We're doing this on Saturday.
Oh, okay.
Bodhicitta. Yes. You see, this is not a cop-out. This really is how you deal with these things. This is, anything else does not work. We think we can control our external environment. We think we can. You can't. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't go on demonstrations for things you believe in. I'm not saying you shouldn't work for things you believe in, of course. But mentally touch it lightly. Touch these things with wisdom, because you can't control the outcome. You just can't. Before the Iraq War in the UK, 1 million people marched against it. 1 million. What did Tony Blair do? Took us away. And 1 million people thought, what's the point? Really, that's what they thought. What's the point? And I can trace, certainly in the UK, this anger with politicians, this anger of not being heard, this idea of it doesn't matter what we do, we just let them do they just do what they want anyway. Now, there was always a taste of that, but I noticed a big difference from that. It was a shock to people. They thought 1 million people would stop it. No. He'd already agreed 3 years previously that they would invade Iraq. What am I saying? It's not a political thing, really, although I've noticed it. We have to understand that we can't control externally. Now, again, please don't think I'm saying you don't do anything. You go on marches, of course. You fight for what you think is right. You defend the helpless. You give to the poor. You do all of that, of course you do. But you can't hold on to the outcome. You have no control. You only have control over what you do. And the sooner we develop our compassion, the sooner we develop our wisdom, the sooner we can help other people. When you come from a position of wisdom and compassion, your ability to help increases. But when you're in the same boat of ignorance as everybody else, you will do some good, of course, but it'll be temporary. It will not be genuine, and the results will be illusory. If we want a permanent state of happiness, we need to come from a wisdom and compassion. It has to be. It has to be. And therefore, a strong bodhicitta motivation from the very beginning of your Dharma practice, even when it's not real. People say, I'm not doing this bodhicitta prayer, Mary, because that's not me. Well, of course it's not you. If that was you, you wouldn't need to do the prayer. But you start from the very beginning with a heart that wants to benefit, truly benefit all living beings without exception, You start now. And what you start with is something that's not real, it's fabricated, it's certainly untrue, but you start seeding your mind with it right from the very beginning. Your motivation from the very beginning. And our motivation could be to help someone who's ill and to do, but the more your wisdom and compassion grows, the more you realize you have to do more than that. You have to do more than that. You have to become enlightened. You have to become a bodhisattva. You've no choice. You start thinking like this, you've no choice. Bodhisattvas don't give up. We give up. We go on a march with 1 million people and you still go to war. People gave up. You try to help refugees and someone turns around and blows themselves up and kills all your family and your friends. You give up. Bodhisattvas never give up, ever. They don't go on holiday, nothing like that. Awaken asleep, that's all they think about, benefit. Anything less than that's not worth it. It's not worth my time. I don't think it's worth your time. I sound fundamentalist, eh? A fundamentalist Buddhist. I mean, it's an oxymoron, isn't it, really, when you think about it?
I think this is a powerful antidote to the feeling of overwhelm and hopelessness.
Yes. There's no room for it. No. See, the mind can't hold two concepts at the same time, at least not our mind. You seed your mind with bodhicitta, there is no room for hopelessness. It'll happen, of course it'll happen. But then you remember again, and again, and again. I think you've had enough of fundamentalism. I think so. On Saturday, what I'm hoping to do on Saturday is to look at bodhicitta, especially in the morning. And I want us to be able to look at the energy, because this is what bodhicitta is, really. It's the energy that takes us into the deep space of enlightenment. It is the difference between liberated and being fully enlightened. And this is what we start with now, right at the very beginning. I don't care how fabricated it is. And I see people reading prayers and they go, you know, I don't care. Start now, from the very beginning. So in the morning, I want to look at that. In the afternoon, I want to look at the nature of reality. Now, I know you can spend years on this, but I want to hit the main points of that so that when you do your own study and you do your own meditation, you become clearer about what it is that is selfless, okay? And I'm hoping to hit that on Saturday afternoon. So Saturday, I'm hoping will be a combo of bodhicitta and emptiness. And it's all day. I hope you can make it. We start at 10 o'clock and we finish at 5.
There's potluck dinner.
Oh, yes.
There's what? A potluck dinner starts after 5, and you're very welcome to join, as Venerable Mary will leave next week. So it's a good opportunity to spend some extra time with her, and you're welcome to bring something vegetarian to share with the others.
And when there's food involved, I will be around.
Absolutely. Yay.
Because I know where my happiness lies. So remembering our motivation that we had right at the very beginning. And this is an excellent way to do dedication. People make dedications quite difficult, and there's long prayers. But a good way is to remember the motivation you had. And then what you've done now is positive, and it gives that motivation energy. So just use this, what we've done here and now. It's all positive karma to direct that energy. The prayers help. I have to say that, really. So it's the first 4 verses. So that's under the heading of General Dedication Prayers. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha, and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the Supreme Jewel Bodhicitta, I'll just stop here again. So, like I said the last time, the Tibetans don't waste any words. If they say the Supreme Jewel Bodhicitta, that's exactly what they mean. There is nothing higher. May the Supreme Jewel Bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Just as the brave Manjushri and Samantabhadra too realize things as they are, I too dedicate all these merits in the best way, that I may follow their perfect example. I dedicate all these rules of virtue with the dedication praised as the best by the victorious one thus gone of the 3 times, so that I might perform good works. So when it says, no, we're only doing that. I mean, 4 verses is enough for me, I don't think you. When it says things like, with the dedication praised as the best, what is that? One word begins with B. Yay! Thank you very much. Thank you. Hope to see you on Saturday.